Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. It's time for us to look at the running backs during the 2025 season as we continue the season position reviews. And joining me to do that is our old friend Jason Smith. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Ken. Thanks for having me back on. I apologize. I wasn't available much during the season.
Hey, it happens. Don't sweat it. And I know everybody's got different schedules and different life events that are going on. So we deal with that as we go, and appreciate having you back on. That's just where I am right now. Um, you know, the Ravens are going through a lot of change right now at the coaching ranks, and this is one of the big questions about the running back group. Is I'm not even sure if the Ravens' run DNA is going to be similar to what it's been the last few years. Where do you stand on that?
It's totally fair, and I would say more than totally fair. It's the main point and part of what makes this review one of the tougher ones, because not only run DNA, but what scheme,
Yep.
what kind of plays are we running? So you're talking about whether we bring back Justice Hill, or whether we, what's Keaton look like? What does the new coach want to be? Are we going to be an outside zone team? Are we going to be a power team? Are we going to be like Monken and do a little bit of everything? So offensive linemen, I think, fall in that category, and running backs, because every other position, I think, on offense, you're talking about the skill players, the receivers, maybe even the tight ends, though, Ken. But yeah,
Yep.
What are you running in this offense? What is your identity on offense?
Yeah, definitely included in that group is the fullback, and whether or not the Ravens are going to feature a fullback as much as they have, be as heavy as they have in terms of formations. And I'm actually a little concerned about this. I'm probably more concerned about the non-tape elements of what the Ravens do and maintaining the identity that it took Harbaugh a long time to build in terms of the Ravens way. Okay. And I know there's going to be people who scoff at that. No, we need a whole new way, blah, 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 blah. And they'll be nasty about Harbaugh and basically think he did nothing during his 18-year tenure. That's complete horseshit, guys. Just complete crap. I mean, I have a real low tolerance for it, but you got to at least like a lot of the accountability measures that were put in place, for example, for having every practice graded, the addiction to weight training that I think he oversaw in a big way, some of it through his own weight training. I mean, I hope those things aren't lost with a complete new administration.
He did a lot. I mean, I don't think people realize they associate the head coach with play calling, and it's the play calling. Obviously, it means a lot when you're trying to win games on Sunday, but the entire culture. I mean, running the building, reporting directly to the owner. Harbaugh had a hand in everything.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and in terms of uh, how they maintain those elements, I'm not sure who does it. I mean, if you hire a completely new coaching staff, first of all, they are going to have their own ideas, and that's good. Some cross pollination of ideas is good. When that has the best chance to work is when you bring in a Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator, and you don't change other elements around him. So you still have a CEO, head coach above him, and that results in a higher degree of run elements being kept, for example. And they did. They kept a lot of the Ravens' old run scheme. And I mean, Derrick Henry was as successful in terms of how much above where he played before with Lamar as all the other running backs had been. And that's exactly what the Ravens should have wanted. So I'm really concerned about it with a complete change. Who folds in all these things they did well into whatever else this new coach wants to bring in?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned. I mean, I think it's a natural concern. It's something that could definitely go wrong. But you can't underestimate the strength of the Ravens organization altogether. From before when Harbaugh was here, and you look at organizations like the Jets, the Browns, other organizations, the Cardinals. It doesn't matter what kind of coach they bring in; they're still the Jets, the Browns, the Cardinals. So, of course, organizational stability has a ton to do with that. I trust Steve Bisciotti that they're going to find the right person for this job, but I'm not minimizing the concern. Of course, they could come to a coach who doesn't run the building quite as well, who doesn't put an emphasis on analytics. who doesn't communicate with the players, who doesn't get the best out of their players. All those are valid concerns. I'm not like scared. I'm not scared of it. I think that they can choose their next Brian Billick and choose their next John Harbaugh.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. If we're talking about choosing an old coach, by the way, we talked a little bit about, keeping scheme the same, or not necessarily keeping scheme the same, but using a scheme that's appropriate to their current personnel. Greg Roman just got fired by the Chargers. I think you and I both might say we wouldn't want him back as the offensive coordinator, but would you want him back in a lesser role, a run game coordinator, say?
I mean, I think he's very good at that. Not sure. My main concern with that would be, does he want a quarterback driven run game? And I think we have to use that more and more sparingly as Lamar gets older. I mean, if it's 3rd and 3 in a big game, you want the ball in the quarterback's hands, maybe, or a game that you're losing, you need a first down. But what is Greg Roman's run scheme without quarterback driven runs? I don't think the Chargers were a dominant run team. So I'm not sure. Not sure. I mean, obviously that's his strength, though. He's very good at designing run games. Goes all the way back to his time with Buffalo and probably before that.
San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, anyway, throw that out there. I'm sure that'll be a topic that people want to discuss as time moves on. There's a lot of people who are just going to say no right off the top without even considering it. But Roman was very effective in that lesser role with the Ravens, even under Morningweg before he became the OC.
He got a lot out of our offensive linemen too in the run game.
Yeah.
Bradley Bozeman was basically unplayable this year. Carolina, he took a big step back, couldn't even win a job, wasn't valued around the league, and he was really good for us at left guard pulling in that scheme. So, you look at a lot of the offensive linemen. I think that Lamar deserves a lot of credit for their pass blocking ability, and Roman deserved a lot of credit for their run blocking ability.
Fair enough. Let's move on and talk about the current set of running backs here, because that's what this show's about. But they extended Derrick Henry through 2027 before the 2025 season. I think that appears now to be a very good gamble, despite some drop off in his play in 25 we're going to have to talk about. But largely, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you, Jason. I'll just let you know that, and we'll try and correct it as we go here. But that now appears to be a very good gamble. That contract that the extension they did, they're certainly on track to get value out of it.
Well, I like it because you're not paying top offensive tackle money or top edge rusher money for Derrick Henry. You're getting a player who's been one of the best at his position the last 2 years at running back money, at older running back money. So if he were to fall off a cliff this year, it's not like you're taking tens of $1 million in dead money that you're going to have to walk away from if he's unplayable. So I thought it was a good gamble, despite how this year worked out, or however this year worked out. It was worth extending him and Lamar and making a run for it.
I think if you're looking at what the Ravens could do well this year in the run game, I think they still ran the ball effectively, even when the opponents knew it was coming. That didn't mean they closed the game out every time. Obviously, Henry's fumble against Buffalo was a very big deal. They lost the game really in large part due to that play. They weren't able to run the game out against New England. That was a tougher ask, basically, but they didn't have Henry in the game for that. But a lot of the games, the Packers, for example, other teams knew the run was coming and they couldn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, I give Todd Monken a lot of credit here, because much of the last 2 years, with how limited the run blocking was at times from different positions. I know everybody's focused on Lele. He was a huge part of it. But there were certain runs early in the game that just weren't working. It was personnel mismatches, bad days. If Todd Monken had to resort to pin and pull, he would. In pitches, he would. The Patriots game was a perfect example where it took a minute, but with Derrick Henry and the power running scheme that he was running, they couldn't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So I give Monken a lot of credit in this area for using the first half to find out what works. Is this a Keaton? There were even certain Keaton days Guys were the defensive line were penetrating in the backfield, trying to get Henry before a stop before he got started. This was a Keaton Mitchell type game. So yeah, I thought that Monken did a really good job uh, executing the run game, even when the opponents knew it was coming, is the topic. And I thought that he did that through finding out what worked and using that late to his advantage later in the game.
All right, we've seen now we've had 3 years, obviously, actually 2 years of Monken since it's 2 years, right? Yeah, no,
3
years, right? Roman's last year was 22. So we've had 3 years of Monken, and the Ravens have become a much lighter team during that time, which is to say they're still one of the heaviest teams in the NFL at 1.85 heavies per play. That's again, I use the definition: tight ends plus fullbacks plus OL sixes per play. It seems to be a general trend in the NFL. A lot of teams are going to a sixth offensive lineman. We've seen it from Houston, from Buffalo, from other teams, the Steelers, that they want to try and ape the Ravens' use of heavier personnel. I just don't think there's a lot of teams that have been as effective as the Ravens at it.
Exactly. And I think 2 tight end sets have also become a part of that. You have a ton of F back type tight ends, like Isaiah Likely. Now we have one in Cleveland, Harold Fannin. Those guys are all over the college scene. You have your typical blocking tight ends, and then you have your receiving tight ends. So not only like the fullback usage, I think it is what it is. Some teams use it, some teams don't. But a lot of extra linemen for teams that don't have, that blocking tight end that they like. And, sometimes they'll just load it up. So you're seeing the big nickel, the 3 safety approach on defense, and the tight end as a slot receiver on offense.
Yeah, it's the Ravens played remarkably little base defense after moving Hamilton to slot corner because they thought they could match up even oftentimes with 6 offensive linemen with just 2 on the interior themselves because they had Hamilton and his ability to crash and make plays. The Ravens' adaptability in that way, honestly, is something I'm not sure who to give credit for it because obviously it was present already before Orr arrived. But the fact that Orr went back to it, I think he's got to be is one of the elements he's got to be given credit for in the 2025 season. I know there's people spitting up drinks all over Baltimore hearing this right now because they don't want to give Orr any credit for anything. But the truth of the matter is he was dealt a really crappy hand in 25, and he adapted in a lot of ways that were just the best that was available to him. And the Ravens ended up with a defense that's right in the middle of the pack. It wasn't a terrible defense. It was just an average defense. And that's a problem here, given the tradition.
And the talent. And it predates Zach. I mean, as soon as Wink was shown the door, Mike McDonald also was using big nickel. And I remember having conversations with you back then telling you that a Sam linebacker really isn't we don't need to replace Tyus Bowser. This is a 4-2-5 big nickel defense in every situation. They want to go tight ends. We're still in big nickel. Kyle Hamilton, Brandon Eccles from the Steelers. There are safeties everywhere lining up in the slot. So it's a new day in the NFL. The Wink Martindale, look, we got 5-man front and only 4 of them are coming. One of them's dropping into coverage. Those days, not a lot of teams do that. Brian Flores is one that will do that. He has Andrew Van Ginkel in that role. But yeah, it's not just Zach Orr. That was a Mike McDonald thing too. It was, here's our 4 down rushers. We're going to get the most out of them as we can. And we're just going to play with these bigger defensive backs and smother the run with a combination of size and speed.
Right. I mean, even like an Arthur Mollett in his last year, I think was useful in that role. So they have certainly done that, and the Ravens have always kind of been at the forefront of using a bigger, tougher slot corner. Even though they've had players like Ardarius Washington there, who's very physical. They've had Marlon Humphrey there, who's extremely physical for the slot corner position, and they've been willing to give up something in terms of trying to stay extremely sticky with the truly shifty receivers, so Welker and Edelman and maybe Shakir fits in there right now. There's others in the league, obviously, that are shiftier guys, but there's also a lot of flex tight ends, and they're perfectly happy to get that matchup when they do. There's a lot more to it as far as why Kyle Hamilton is great, but I do like the way they've gone with this. Let's get back to Henry though.
The only thing with Zach that I'll push back on is that hard-headedly early in the year. And I just finished my study of Malachi Starks. I mean, Kyle was playing a lot of free safety before the addition of Alohi Gilman. Starks was in the box quite a bit, matching up. Looked like they were playing sides. They were trying to confuse the defense. And for the life of me, I don't know if this is a Harbaugh decision or a Zach Orr, but why in the world would you want Kyle Hamilton far away from the ball more than a handful of times a game just to fool the defense, say? But you don't want that guy at level 3. You want Kyle Hamilton at level 2, creeping on level 1 whenever you can. That was kind of like one of the many things I think that Zach did that bugged me. I know this is a running back episode, but
Let me
yeah,
respond to that really quickly, because
go ahead.
they brought in Malachi Starks to be the next free safety. Okay,
Right.
that's what they drafted him for, but they drafted a guy who wasn't a perfect positional fit for that because he'd frankly been a high yards per target guy in college who had played all over in a way that was more similar to what Kyle Hamilton does now,
In his
or
senior
maybe,
year, his
yeah, yeah.
junior year, he was a free safety.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. So and so a lot of people are saying he played better as a junior. I understand the argument there, and he had a lousy year, but his whole career, his yards per target were not great.
Right.
And he came in and he had a lousy yards per target year in his rookie year as primarily a free safety. And I separated out all the guys who had 300 plus free safety snaps after week 15. He was near the bottom of the league, 8th from the bottom, in fact. But it's interesting, 2 of the guys who were in this draft, who were other possibilities of drafting against Starks, were Watts and Makuba, who are true free
Yep.
safety types. Emin Worry is another Kyle Hamilton,
Yep.
but those 2 guys, they ended up with even higher yards per targets allowed. They really had, although they gave they had interceptions from Watts, and he ended up being, I think, a very good draft pick in round 3. It was fascinating that those guys are among the low end of the yards per target in the NFL.
I think it's funny though that people look at Malachi Starks and they thought that he played free safety all year, and Gilman was back there quite a bit. I mean, and Kyle Hamilton was back there quite a
Right.
bit before we got Gilman. Yeah, they use Starks as a prototypical strong safety a lot of the times. His 2 interceptions, of course, came when he was playing free
Yeah.
safety.
And they're important to note, though, Starks lost playing time after Gilman arrived, because when they would go to a base set and they would go to 4 defensive backs, it was Hamilton who stayed on and Gilman who stayed on, which is not a lot, but explains a portion of the difference in free safety division between Starks and Gilman.
Yes. Yep.
All right, let's get back to the running backs here, because this is good. Man, we can't go this long without talking football, Jason, because we have
That's
so
right.
much to catch up on. This is what they're.
Yeah, I miss you, man. I miss the people, for the people that film study fans. It's not for lack of want to. Went through some personal things, and I'm happy to be back on.
Yeah, and we don't need to get into that. It's we miss you, and we're happy to have you back here. The Ravens running backs took kind of a step back as receivers this year. It's a general thing, and we'll get back into it on some of the individual players, but definitely did not have the receiving year they had in 24.
Was a little disappointed in some of the hands, I would say.
Yeah.
And that was the main part of it for me. Monken brought the screen game back a little bit. It was refreshing to see, but I felt like it was a bigger part of that 2023 offense and the convoy, or excuse me, 2024 offense, Ken, and the convoy of people that we could get out in front in that screen game. And it seemed like we never quite got there in 2025.
Right. He had Justice Hill obviously had a big year for reading those blocks in front of him too. And this year, the hands, you're right, Keaton Mitchell, that pop-up interception was annoying, right off his hands, and one of the worst. That's about as bad as you'll ever see. But it was a tough year for big plays for the running back position. They just didn't nearly have the good first down per play or the success rate on receptions that they'd had before.
Agreed.
Let's move on and talk about Derrick Henry. A big stretch run left him just 26 yards short of a 3rd rushing title. Amazing to me that Derrick Henry's only won 2 rushing titles at this point, but he missed it in 24 by 84 yards, in 25 by 26 yards. It's not the stat that I care about, but it's a it's a measure of Henry's success, and he's got a bunch of other ones that are pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you got to give him credit for being able to stay healthy, take on a significant workload, and have a high yards per carry. So, obviously the raw stats are just a piece of it. Sometimes they can be misleading, but yeah, I think what was the year he got hurt? 2020. I think he would have won it that year. Whatever year it was 2020, 2021, where he missed good 8 games or so. I want to say in that season, he was having a great season.
Right. I'm looking at that right now. Okay, as 21, he had 937 yards early. In 20, he won the rushing title with 2,027 yards. And for those who may not have heard me say it on this show, in 24, by DVOA metrics, he had the best year of the 21st century of any running back. So, I say that because we should have expected some regression due to age, due to the fact that he had an outlier season, kind of the same way you expect Lamar Jackson to regress even after a great 2019 season. And people say he's only going to get better. Well, he's going to add things to his game, and he did, but the league is going to react to him, and it's easier to make up ground on Lamar Jackson than it is for Lamar Jackson to extend his level of greatness to an even higher level.
Right. You can be a better player, but I made this comment in 2019, and I made the same comment after 2024. Lamar is going to be a better player, more experienced player the next year, you would expect. But it's, stats are circumstantial. The opponents catch on. So it has nothing to do with him regressing. I don't want, I said that last year. I don't want people to think Lamar regressed in 2025 just because he didn't have 41 touchdowns and 44 interceptions. You don't get much better than that, Ken.
No, it's certainly true. And he had a difficult physical year this year that was part of the running backs issue. So we'll have to talk about that a little bit as we go through this. But talk about a few of Derrick Henry's stats. He dropped to 5.2 yards per carry. He was at 5.9 in 24. His success rate, and this is a stat I'm concerned about a little bit, went from 58.8% to 53.1%. Now, by comparison, that's an outstanding number still. His career prior with Tennessee, prior to coming to Baltimore and playing with Lamar, was only 49.3%. And that's obviously a Hall of Fame career he had already built in Tennessee. But his success rate with Lamar, like all other running backs, went up dramatically when he got to play with him. He had 1,595 yards, 16 rushing TDs. Last year, that led the league. This year, it didn't. 7.1 yards per target as a receiver is certainly not bad. But he didn't have any postseason honors this year. Any surprise that he was not a Pro Bowl selection?
I guess a little bit, especially after the way he closed the season. That putting the team on his back in Green Bay. They it feels like late season performance is way heavy in the voters than people who vote for that. So yeah, a little bit. And just to touch on the receiver, part of what frustrated me, I didn't say this when we just talked about it a little while ago at the opening, but with Derrick Henry, much like his pass blocking, anything outside of his frame is kind of a no-go. If he's got to reach down and catch something by his toes, not going to happen. Anything outside of his frame to the left or the right, it's not going to happen. He owns what happens inside his frame. See that with pass blocking too. Like his pass blocking losses are just him not being able to get to the spot. If he's able to get to the spot, you're not running through him. So he has a lot of success as a pass blocker. But it's a strength of Derrick Henry. He's built like a brick. But yeah, it doesn't help him as far as the flexibility as a receiver or as a pass blocker sometimes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think smaller receivers, you'll often see them anyway outside the frame really try and intentionally drop the football, particularly when they're catching the ball at -5 or -6. They know to intentionally drop a ball that's behind them. They know not to try and dig a ball out of the dirt when it's most of the time when it's not going to result in a good chance for a positive play. But Henry is one who you're right. He doesn't have the biggest catch radius. That is a small problem. He's been a much more prolific receiver in the past, particularly in his time at Tennessee. But I still would like to see him use him as an extension of the running game as well out in space more than they do. I think they could get a little bit more out of him as a receiver.
Me too, Ken. That big play I want to say against Cincinnati was a 44-yard gain It just shows you what you can do if he can if he has enough time to make the first guy miss. Not if they're on him like flies on crap, but he has
Right.
enough time to make the first guy miss and really get momentum. It's a big problem. I would love to see him be used in the pass game more on first and second down.
Yeah, completely agree. All right. Now, the big problem with Henry, well, there are two. The first is fumbles, that his fumble rate was up substantially. It was probably the second highest fumble rate of his career, with 4 and 307 attempts. But that was just one of the problems. And obviously, he had a fumble in each of those first 3 games, which took a toll on him personally. You can see just how upset he is about it on the sidelines. And um, I don't even know how to describe it other than, he had a reaction that's above and beyond the normal amount of self-effacement I would expect.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first one, as you mentioned earlier, directly correlated to a loss.
Mhm.
And then, the second one, he's just not happy with himself. And the third one,
It was
I mean, that
Detroit, yeah.
Lions game was so frustrating, like multiple players showing frustration even after the first series or first couple of series. I can remember Lamar being upset. So it just felt that's when the kind of vibes, if you will, just felt off. The internal frustration with themselves. Are we ever going to get over the hump? It kind of surfaced, and yeah, Henry fixed that problem. What he went without sleeves, had the bare bicep on the ball that helped,
Mhm.
but yeah, that really was kind of like an indication overall of the mood of the team for that first 6 weeks.
Yeah. Tough start. I didn't really expect.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't have to mean a whole new you. Sometimes it's just about feeling a little less burdened. And one thing, for instance, I'm working on is letting go of that constant pressure to have everything figured out. Like I need to be perfect or I am behind if I'm not. Therapy can help you identify what's weighing you down or holding you back by giving you an unbiased perspective so you can better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. And BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Their therapists are fully licensed in the U.S. and work according to a strict code of conduct. They also do initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. You'll fill out a short questionnaire. With their experience and strong matching process, they typically get it right the first time. And if you're not happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time from tailored recommendations. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with qualified therapists. Sign up and get 10% at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com. Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
Every day, companies you've never heard of are making millions off your personal data. Your name, address, phone number, even details about your family are pulled from public records on the internet, then sold without your consent. There's an entire marketplace built on your privacy, and most people have no idea it exists. Aura fights back. Aura removes your personal data from broker sites and keeps it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just a data broker removal system. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your online life. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager for safer logins, and spam call protection to shut down scammers. Aura scans the dark web for your most sensitive information and notifies you instantly if anything is exposed. And if your identity is ever stolen, you're backed by up to $5 billion in insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other service charges about the same, but only cover one or two areas. Aura gives you everything: data broker removal, identity and credit monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all in one simple app. Aura removes what's already exposed, protects what's not, and puts you back in control. Go to aura.com/remove for complete digital protection and peace of mind. That's aura.com/remove. The Ravens to be destroyed by that early season schedule the way they were, but it did not work for them, and the combination of being hurt at the time you're having that schedule that was really the end of the Ravens season. They came back, they made a show of it, they made it good. Brought it all the way down to the last kick of the year to try and get into the playoffs, but it was just too deep a hole from those first 6 games. All right, I want to talk about the other big problem, and that's missed tackles forced, which for Henry was 0.140. He actually recovered at the end of the year with a fairly decent missed tackle rate the last 6 or so games. But 0.140 was the second worst of his career after his rookie season when he's at 0.136. Now that's taken missed tackles forced divided by carries. So simple rate in there. You can have more than one missed tackle forced on a play, but I'm looking at it that way. His career prior to 2025 was at 0.194. So that's a very significant number of lost missed tackles from 24 to 25 in particular. I think 24, he might have been about 0.24 for the season. It was over 0.2 anyway. I know that. So a big reduction in missed tackles forced the year. Might have been 30 or so that he lost between 24 and 25 on a carries adjusted basis.
This one I've kind of mixed on. I think what quells some of my concern is I saw his vision affected this year. Rushing. He was rushing to get through the hole. He didn't trust his blockers. I posted a few clips both on my channel and on Twitter of him having lanes. And okay, look, he's not a scat back. He's not a jump cut guy. He's not going to go from one gap to the next with this incredible lateral movement. He's very much a north-south runner, but he was heading north in a quick. Think about all the times earlier in the year, especially where he would get hit in the backfield by a guy coming off the edge, say. We're choosing not to block this guy, and we can't get through the hole. I think a lot of those things, the blown blocks up front, really affected him mentally, and he was just, instead of like letting the game come to him, he was focused on making sure he got positive yards. I saw him running up the back, literally in the back of some of the interior offensive linemen when there's a lane right next to him. And again, I posted a lot of these clips, but I have to wonder if the missed tackle number is indicative of that, of him just rushing to trying to get, making sure he's staying on schedule with his runs instead of being patient in the groove and really showing the patience that he showed his whole career.
As a using the zone scheme and finding a cutback lane, he's certainly that patience has been present, and there may have been additional problems this year, but I don't blame it entirely on the offensive line. A lot of it, I think, was Lamar's health and the inability to create the value of misdirection that had been in the offense there previously. I mean, the Ravens offense, the fuel of it entirely since Lamar came into the league has been Lamar's ability to create misdirection, get linebackers out of position, get other players out of position, get players who can't respond to him, read the edge player. But it's that misdirection component was missing largely in 2025. I'm not blaming Lamar for it. Let's be real clear about this. Lamar Jackson is beyond reproach in terms of who he is as a offensive player. It's not. It wouldn't be fair to say that they'd be in a lot worse position if they didn't have Lamar, of course. But the difference between Lamar 24 and prior and Lamar 25 was largely in that loss of misdirection the Ravens had. And the good thing about it is we saw Lamar play very well in the final game of the year, and we saw him play very well in the first 3.5 games of the season when he had 130 quarterback rating. I think that the stuff in the middle, I don't think it's a concession to age. So I think it's a part of the Ravens offense that they can at least rely on some. Although if you look at the stats, I mean, look at Lamar's scrambles versus design keeps. I mean, he was terrible on design rushes this year. And they've got to find a way to get some of that back next year.
Yeah, and again, you talk about backside, defensive ends chasing Derrick Henry down.
Mhm.
The gravity of Lamar it has everything
Yeah.
to do with that, Ken.
Yeah.
And again, there were just many times where he was hit by somebody that he didn't expect to be hit by. And I really think that over weeks that this got in Derrick Henry's head. He went through the backup quarterbacks to where he lost some of his patience. The outside zone, of course, you need patience on that. I'm not talking about outside zone. I'm talking about power schemes, inside zones, gap schemes, the stuff where you're heading north and south between the tackles. That's where I saw a loss of patience. That's where I saw him running up the backs of his offensive linemen instead of missing easy opportunities to just slash a little bit. Again, not a scat back, but just slash a little bit and hit the open area instead of 100 miles an hour into a 3-yard game.
Okay, so I understand the point you're making, Jason. What I'd say is that if we go back to past years, particularly when he's in Tennessee, he's had some lousy situations with yards before contact. And this is something, by the way, is very difficult to get yards before contact information that is on the same basis between sources. So if you look at PFR, you get a very different number than if you look at PFF. So Pro Football Reference and Pro Football Focus gives you very different yards before contact numbers, and it's definitional in nature. It's the type of contact that is made first. But I will say he had a lot tougher time. It was a lot better at dealing with lousy yards before contact situations in Tennessee than he was in 2025.
Right, but they ran outside zone all the time, Ken. That was Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill. That was a prime. Like, we ran all kinds of run schemes. When you run an outside zone, that's you can deal with that a lot better. Schematically, it would take a long time to explain that. But when you're heading sideline to sideline, you can see that first guy. He may hit you, but he's not going to hit you like somebody hit you when they're heading down. When you're heading
okay,
down.
and that deals with definitionally how yards before contact are said. But the Ravens, by the way, still ran primarily zone this year. I mean, they still are primarily using that system. They run some gap, but that's all NFL teams basically run more zone than gap. There are very few exceptions to that. The Ravens didn't do as much as they did during the Roman era, but I mean that's not something Henry ever played under. I'm not accepting that as the major component of the difference, because the differences are humongous in terms of how many yards before contact he was getting less of in his time with Tennessee. In fact, I think in one of his really big years, he had something like 0.7 yards before contact. And then in some of the years with the Ravens, it's been, depending on source, again, you look at it, it's different. 2.3, 2.7 have been numbers he's been afforded. I mean, it's just you can't explain that away by scheme. You just can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, 36 missed tackles forced less this year, by the way. And so if you adjust that to carries, you probably get a little bit more than 30 missed tackles forced were reduced. He was, just to put it in different, this is not supposed to happen. Derrick Henry was 17th in the league in missed tackles with 43. He's 4th in carries, 17th in missed tackles. This is Derrick freaking Henry. That's not supposed to happen. I don't care what scheme you're running. All right. Running scheme certainly emphasized the crack toss some this year. And he was still effective at that. If you look at his outside numbers, they're better. And I think you're kind of alluding to that in some of the things you're saying, Jason. But he wasn't as impactful running through contact. And is there another explanation for it that you could tack on this? Maybe less effectiveness of the stiff arm. We certainly saw good examples of a good stiff arm this year, but is there anything else you would point to in film review?
No. To me, this would be just maybe an age thing or a down year thing, pressure thing. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I definitely saw some of that. I mean, he still had his breakaway runs. Yeah, I think guys are like, I remember Carrington Valentine of the Green Bay Packers didn't want any parts of them, didn't want anything to do with them. So it's very Patrick Queen didn't want anything to do with them a few times. So it is funny to see how tacklers deal with them aside from the fact. But yeah, in open field, some of these crack tosses, the pin and pull concepts, and just the straight pitch plays down by the goal line. It's interesting to see how each individual tackler's plan varies. None of them want to get stiff armed. It's just pretty hilarious.
All right. Their bed is made in terms of this contract. It looks right now like it's a good gamble. And I think you mentioned earlier that the Ravens won't lose a lot on this, even if he were suddenly to go into a sharp decline this year. Most of what they would lose is the opportunity cost of not having a running back in there. And that probably is something they need to consider about in the draft. But let me bring up another point is do you think it's possible the Ravens will do another extension after the 26th season when he's got 1 year left on his current contract, or would you think that to be very unlikely?
Well, I wouldn't say unlikely, but I think that this year, of course, has a heck of a lot to do with that.
Mhm.
How does he look? Does he stay healthy? I think him and Lamar have a good rapport together. I think he can do a lot of the mesh concepts. If that's still in Lamar's game and how you want to use him, I think you definitely want to use him for it in high leverage situations. I don't think it should be a staple of the run game anymore. You don't want Lamar taking 5, 6, 7 design runs a game. But yeah, how does he perform this year? And I think, again, I think he's got a $5.5 million cap hit about this year. So if you got to carry him for another couple of years under that contract, it's not a ton of money to eat in 2026 or 2027, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I mean, I hate looking at the cap as a 1-year thing. That's my big bugaboo. But yeah, he signed through 27, and if they cut him in 27, they save $9 million currently. So they've got a little bit of unpaid money on the contract they can get out of. This year they can't cut him.
Right.
They've got $14.8 million of negative savings if they were to cut him and accelerate all that money. So that's not practical, but it could be practical to cut him in 27. And I guess if he had a down year, it's a possibility. I think the chance has definitely gone down with the kind of the second half or the last 6 games he had in 25.
I mean, you said it best. The contract that we gave him turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah.
There's no way we were going to want to cut him in 2026. We're going to want him back. So 2027 is a long ways away for a running back over 30. So I would just say it's a wait and see.
Yeah, and if it could be, even if 2026 is a pretty good year, that the Ravens might still feel that let's let this be his prove it year for having a truly extensive career. He'll make a lot of money still on that contract, obviously. If he were to repeat the 2025 season, say in 2026, I think the Ravens might be really interested in not getting stuck with an old maid contract on Derrick Henry,
Right.
where they end up paying 2 years for 1 year at the end. And Henry may be interested in getting another bite of the free agency apple if given another shot at age whatever it'll be, 33, 34 years old.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts there, for sure. But especially again with someone in the twilight of their career. Who knows, man? Maybe he is a Frank Gore and he's going to play till he's 38. Maybe he'll want to hang him up.
He has those the comparable player in baseball I always say is Nolan Ryan, who still threw as hard as anybody in his mid 40s.
Yeah,
and just he had this commitment to conditioning, which was very similar. He did all this underwater training, resistance training in Ryan's case that was state of the art kind of at the time. And Henry, of course, is a freak for keeping himself in fantastic shape. There's just not very many running backs that do it. And Frank Gore, I mean, it's not like Gore was not at the Henry level ever as a runner, in terms of things. He was a pretty good running back at one time, but he was never at the Henry level ever. And his decline phase was still a little bit painful for the teams that had him. It wasn't like he was a terrible player. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he was a more limited player as he got older.
and that's where it'll be interesting from a psychological standpoint where Derrick Henry falls in this.
Yeah.
Does he hang him up? Does he go more of the Barry Sanders route which of course would be the extreme example of hanging it up in your absolute prime? Or is he willing to be a 5 to 8 carry back up first and second down running back until he's 38, 40? Because he'd probably do that, Ken. And you keep him on your roster, use him on the goal line, maybe, he gives your stud, first round running back or early round running back a break. But does he want to do that? Or does want his days of being a workhorse or over? Is it just not fun for him?
Yeah, another possibility, given what his skill set is could he be your third down receiving back? Because he definitely has the pass blocking qualities for it. So the question would he convert to that late in his career? It's not a typical thing. There's a whole career path for the guys who want to be 4-star receiving backs, and it made long careers for guys like Larry Centers and others who were around the league for a long time.
Good pull.
Yeah.
Arizona Cardinal, or maybe Phoenix Cardinal, maybe St. Louis Cardinal.
It might have even been all of those at one point or another. I think he may have finished with the Redskins or been with the Redskins briefly too in that whole tenure, but he played a long time. And the old Colts had Don McCauley, who was both a short yardage back and a receiving back. That was kind of fun. Anyway, there's certainly been a lot over the years. Joe Washington, Kelvin Bryant for the Redskins was another guy who fell into that category. But all right. Let's talk Justice Hill a little bit. It'll be 29 in November. He played in only 10 games this year, 18 attempts at 5.2 yards per carry, very heavily weighted towards the 71-yard touchdown he had at Kansas City.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I saw that in your notes, I was like, okay, there's a talking point. Ken's already got it. He also, by the way, didn't he have 2 huge losses? Like a 14-yard rushing loss.
I think he did early in the season too,
right?
And then
it's only 18 carries, so it's it's really hard to gather anything out of that.
Yeah. That's
this
4
is
yards per carry on they got from just the one run.
Right. It's too much, man. It's too much. So this is where, Ken, I would say that the new coach may have something to do with it. Maybe he likes having a veteran third down back that he can trust, that kind of thing. What does the new coach bring with him? What kind of scheme? Justice Hill, I'm not sure if he would be in the first and second down plans anymore. Maybe he is seen as strictly a third down back. And if that's the case, then the kind of run scheme that you run doesn't come into effect. So in other words, if you're always on the
I agree. Yep.
field for 3rd and 8, then who cares what kind of staple run game you have? You're in there for passing plays. So Justice Hill, good player, gritty player. Does he play a role on special teams anymore? That's got to come into play. Can you get yourself a younger third down back who can play on special teams? But one of my favorite player. I like Justice Hill. I like his grittiness. I like what he's made, the career he's made for himself. I loved him on special teams. But I think the new coach for all these guys is going to be a main factor coming up next year.
And some of this is a decision that DaCosta will make as well. And it's his personnel decision to make. It's not the new head coach's, is that he may decide that the savings from cutting Justice Hill, which is about $3.15 million, is too big to pass up. And that'll have to occur shortly after the Ravens even have their head coach, because it has to occur by the 5th day of the league year. And presumably the Ravens head coaching position will be filled right around the end of this month. Would that be a good target? 12 days from now, maybe we'll know who the Ravens head coach is.
Sure. I feel like it might be sped up a tad with the opening in Buffalo now.
I was going to go the other direction with the opening in Buffalo, that there'll be some of the Ravens candidates will be kind of dragging their heels on to make sure they get both interviews in.
Well, I feel like if they had a guy and say, look, we're interested in you and as a finalist, we're not pulling your leg. We're going to get through this, Ken, our 15 interviews before we bring you in, but we want you to be one of our finalists. If Arizona had offered you the head coaching job, maybe you might not take it. If Buffalo offered you the head coaching job, maybe you take it.
It gets sped up from that sense. Okay. I mean, viable other side of the coin. I think, in some ways, Stefanski taking the job with the Falcons might have been, reflective of the prisoner's dilemma situation all these coaches are in. If you hold out for the Buffalo or Baltimore job, you might get none.
Might get none.
As a head
Right.
coach. So that's it's kind of a classic prisoner's dilemma problem there that they
Isn't it funny? Like the tweet I put out was like, before the Buffalo opening, we were the best looking guy in the bar. We had a lot of money and handsome and nice, and now there's another guy that entered the bar
competition
who has some money and is a good looking guy and nice. So we may want to make our choice soon and not pull strings. So I'm not sure about the head coaching dilemma. I did want to address when you talked about the cap savings with Justice Hill. That's the main point with me. Do they feel like a guy like Rasheen Ali, if they strike out in the draft and let's just say they don't bring in whoever they bring in fails to be a good third down back, do they feel like Rasheen Ali is ready to take Justice Hill's role as that third down back? Yeah,
we're going to have to table that for the second part of this show because since we're running a little long, I'm going to have to break it up. But let's finish with Justice Hill first, if you don't mind. Low success rate on both runs and receptions are part of the real problem. He'd had a big problem as a receiver prior to 2024 in terms of his yards per target. His very, very low career rate I think it was under 5, but it might have been approximately 5 on the nose before 24. And then he had a really good year in 24. And now he had not a terrible year by his own standards at 6.3 yards per target, but still just a 37% success rate on those throws to him, which that's not what they really need out of him. They need a significantly higher success rate out of a Justice Hill, particularly when they're throwing to him on third down.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I didn't mean to derail it with the Rasheen Ali comment. I was just saying that, look, you can save $4 million or whatever it is, Justice Hill. Okay, you might need every dollar. Rasheen Ali, their confidence in Rasheen Ali will have a big to do because if they think Rasheen Ali is ready as a last resort, if all fails, we'll have Rasheen Ali on the squad for cheap, then they would be more than willing, I think, to part with Justice. If they don't, they might want to hang on to Justice Hill. And if they have to cut him later in the off season, then there's just an extra $4 million type buffer that they can use in the season.
They have to cut. Yeah, they have to cut him before the 5th day of the league year to harvest all of that savings. But they can actually harvest a fair amount of it if they cut him after that, because they about $250,000 only of that is in a bonus that he gets paid that would be guaranteed then. So they still have an opportunity. It's just ideally they'd probably have to cut him loose early. What the interesting thing you're mentioning about the pass blocking is that neither of them pass blocked well in 2025. They both. Ali had a really good game against Cincinnati in that Thanksgiving game, picked up some blitzes, looked good doing it. Very happy with how he looked in that game, and then a complete decline after that. And I had prematurely, basically said that I thought, he'd really improved his standings like that. But it shows you just how low the numbers are. We're talking about this when the total pass blocking attempts, and PFF cuts it down to just set blocks, which is an important distinction because the chip blocks are oftentimes as many or more as the set blocks. And he's good at that. And Hill is good at that too, in terms of going to the midsection of a player. But both of them really had lousy years in 2025 as pass blockers.
Yeah, I would say the only difference there is that Hill has that track record to lean on.
Yes.
So yeah.
Last thing about Hill, and then we'll have to go to break here. Very valuable 4-unit player on special teams prior to 24, but now he's just down these last 2 seasons to really just doing kickoff returns. He has played 8 other snaps of special teams, but it's been something I've asked him about at camp. In terms of, do you miss special teams, or do you want to play more of that? But the Ravens have needed him more as a running back. It would be a question, and in his case, you might go to him and ask him, would you like to play? Would you like to stay here for less money? And then they'd have another good special teams and kind of a backup running back.
Yeah. So I think they have to be It's kind of a tangent to this, Ken, but they are usually pretty good at knowing what the market would be for a player. So, hey, can you get Justice Hill to take a pay cut because he knows he has a job here? A lot of this, Ken, would just be so much more simple if Harbaugh was here because,
Yeah.
we just know the organization so well under Harbaugh's eyes. Like even those kickoff snaps, that was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like, we kind of need you now. We don't have anybody else. Like when they put Tylen back there on punt return, it's kind of like I won't say emergency only, but Justice Hill wasn't in their kickoff return plans. Those 8 snaps kicking returning kicks was more of a circumstantial.
Yeah, they were using Ali and Mitchell when they could. That's for sure. All right, Jason, fantastic. Always great talking football with you. Where can folks contact you or watch your material online?
Yeah, Huddle It Up Films on YouTube and Twitter, excuse me. In the middle of highlight season, so it's an exciting time on the channel, Ken. Pat Ricard just released the offensive lineman. Tyler Linderbaum's already out. Rosengarten's coming out tomorrow. So highlights for every player, not just the skill players, defensive players that you can catch there. And then on Wednesday nights at 9 Eastern is the live show that I'm keeping going this year, even during the off season. So that's what's going on in the channel. But the channel's getting a lot of traffic now due to the highlights released one every day at 6 o'clock.
Highly recommend him as a Twitter follow at Huddle It Up Films. Jason, really appreciate having you on. Other folks out there, please use hashtag Film Study Mailbag with your questions. We've been doing well with that. I'll try and use that question in the proper way. I'll either do a short video myself, I'll put it on the appropriate show, whatever that might be. Jason, thanks again for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.